So the expectations are very, very high, and the vibes are very, very good around there. Everyone's laughing. Brown's asking you about your family. Wasn't the case, Ethan. I will tell you. No questions asking about my family a year ago. Brown didn't even want to talk to anybody. He was snickering if you even looked his way and you weren't a player at practice. Definitely a different vibe around the Mountaineers. And it also still feels like they have a chip on their shoulder that they're kind of still being doubted nationally. They were picked 7th after they just won 9 and should have won more. New teams are coming in. All-time winningest program in the conference. They do feel slighted. Brown also talked about that. He feels they're historically disrespected as well as currently. So they got to prove all of it, though. Because all this talking, if they end up winning 7 games and finishing 7th, that's going to throw egg on their face after they proved doubters wrong a year ago.
Yeah, the schedule's, I think, clearly harder than last season's.
I was going to ask you that. What are your thoughts on the schedule? Because that's
I think going into last year, we said the same thing. The schedule looked tough.
Yeah.
Especially that stretch of Penn State, Pitt, at TCU, Texas Tech. Just that beginning of conference play and then the non-con. I think we all said it was a tough stretch for the Mountaineers.
Yeah.
But then those teams honestly weren't that great. Like, I mean, we needed 2 blocked kicks against TCU.
Right.
And Nico was able to come in against Pitt and Texas Tech and handle his own. And but those teams weren't great either. But this season's different just because, like you said, the expectations. I think my expectations for this team is to get 9-10 wins. I mean, they have to keep improving that win total. Okay. I don't know if the Big 12 title game is realistic.
If they win 10, you don't think that would put them maybe at least competing, even if they lose the game in Dallas? I mean, that's a lot of wins. Utah could win more.
I'm thinking with the schedule and just like I talked about earlier, there's so many teams in this conference that can play in the Big 12 title game.
100%.
They definitely could, but I think with that schedule, it's really tough. And I'm just looking at it as they can't step back. They can't have 8, 7, 6 wins. They have to have they at least have to match last year with the strength of schedule they have this year. I think definitely the Big 12 opponents they play are tougher than the group that they played last year, especially with the home and away situations.
Yeah, and a streak. There's a gauntlet they got to ride out. I mean, after they deal with this out-of-conference slate, and Pitt shouldn't be that great of a team. No one's really expecting them, to do anything. Although it's in Pittsburgh, it's on the road this year. Penn State is still supposed to be kind of what they always are, a 10-win team, maybe Big Ten, maybe not Big Ten. Their expectations are to win a conference. They just haven't really been doing that, but they should still be better than West Virginia. You would imagine they're favored, even though it's in Morgantown. Albany's no joke on the FCS level, but you got to figure West Virginia wins that game. But then they start a conference slate that is rough. I mean, they're going to Arizona, Kansas State. A lot of these games are in a row that they're going to have. So they could either be a legit contender and absolutely ranked in the top 25 by Thanksgiving, Ethan, or by Thanksgiving we could be talking that Neil Brown might get fired because they have decreased the buyout. That first 6-game slate is really, really important, 6, 7 games. And you could argue the out-of-conference games don't mean as much now because if you win the conference, you're automatically in the playoff. So you could even argue that it's really all about once you get in Big 12 play, and then those first 5 games in Big 12 play are a big deal. Now, they have the cushion that if they lose one of those, even if they lose a couple of those, they have an easier slate at the end of the year. They should be able to rattle off, which is what they've been doing, whether it's a good or bad year. If you even look at 2022, they were strong at the end of the season. If they have a hot streak and win 2 out of their last 3 or 3 in a row to end the year, that could make up ground to what they did earlier in the season. But it's gonna be a loaded Big 12, and maybe nobody is a top 5 national team that's going to win a national title this year. But there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of teams that maybe will win anywhere from 7 to 9 games. and they don't want to be on the 7 side. They want to be on the 9 or maybe even more 10 side. I do think if they win 10, they're probably in the title game. But even if they get there, there's no guarantee to winning it. I mean, again, you figure Utah would be that team. Oklahoma State, Kansas State are always brought up. You could argue some slights, like Iowa State was picked ahead of them. Like, is that fair off of last year, off of even this roster, with everything the Mountaineers are returning, with what they did add in the portal? But Neil Brown said something last year, Ethan, that I think is fitting and why they shouldn't care so much what the Big 12 media poll says. The Big 12 media poll has never predicted a champion correctly. We've never been right. So they're putting a lot of stock into it, and they clearly hear what we say. But that schedule, it'll remain to be evaluated like last year.